In this video, we'll look at loops in Dart. Now, let us say you want to print out this statement, Flutter is love multiple times. You can, repeat these statements, as in you can try to write this statement again and again and then run this program. It should work fine. Like you'll get this statement printed out to console. But when you're working on big applications, this might not be the best approach. You can instead, to repeat certain statements again and again, you can use a loop. How does that work? We have the for keyword to create a loop. You can type in for, and then inside the curly brackets, you can specify some condition. For example, we can create a variable I equals to 0. This would be the initial value of I. Then we can continue to increment this value of I and also specify a condition like I is less than 5, I plus plus, and then the semicolon would not come here, and we can print out the statements that we were previously using. So if I run this program again, it should work similarly. Like it should print out 5 statements to console, which is Flutter is love, and we had to write like minimum code. How does this work? We created a new variable I. We set a condition like, okay, this value, as long as it is less than 5, so it starts at 0, it goes up to 5, less than 5, that is 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it starts at 0, goes till 4, which is less than 5, and then it would print out this statement. We also have to specify an increment condition, which in our case would be 1. For example, the value would increase by 1 every time it starts at 0, I equals to 0, this statement is printed, then I would become I plus plus, which is I would become 1. Control would go again up here and it would print out this statement again. So that way you'll have 5 statements printed out, starting from 0 going up to 4, which is less than 5. I hope this makes sense. Now in a case like where we do not know, like the for loop was very simple. It incremented as long as the value was less than a variable. But let us say we do not know this, and instead we have a condition. As long as that is satisfied, we can print the value out. In that case, we use something called the while keyword, and it is similar to for loop. Instead, it takes in a condition right here, and you have to specify this condition. As long as this condition is again true, the statements would be printed out to console, otherwise it would not be done. Let us say there is a keyword int n equals to 0. While this n is less than 5, we need to execute this program, which would be print Flutter is awesome, $, the value of n, close this loop here, n plus plus. Now if I run this program, it should print out this value. So with this program, like you can print out Flutter is awesome, and you can actually see like for when the value of n was 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. Once it became 5, this condition was not satisfied and the control didn't go to this loop. Let us also understand the break keyword. So if let us say this n value, let me come up here. If n value equal to 3, this is our condition which checks for equality. What I want to do is I want to break out of this loop. So I'll type in break. Let us run this program really quick. You'll see like after this value becomes 3, that is after 2, when this value becomes 3, this loop is exited. This statement is not printed, and neither would the value of n increase after that, and the control would exit this while loop. If there are any statements beyond it, those will be executed, but since we do not have any, that is all break keyword does. But let us say instead of break, we were using continue. Now continue, what it does is Unlike break that completely exits the loop, continue would only skip the rest of these statements. So continue would skip the rest of these statements, which means this n plus plus would also be skipped, and it might turn into like a complete it might turn into like a no stop loop, or a loop that is forever executing. We'll get an error then, so I'll just shift this n plus plus above. So let us try running this again. Now you'll see that Flutter is awesome. What happens is when the control enters this, it increases by 1, so the first value that is printed out is 1. So on there is 5, but the one for 3 is skipped. So 1, 2, 4 and 5. The value for 3, if n equals to 3, is skipped, and you do not get an output in that case. So this is like the basics of break and continue keyword. We looked at the for and the while loop. The last loop to look at is the do while loop. So what happens is with the do while loop, in our while loop, statements were only executed if this condition was satisfied. But we also have a do while loop, which basically would run once every time. So you'll have to specify like a do right here, and it would be followed by the condition that we are checking. So we specify do, and we'll have to type in while, and inside the bracket specify our condition, which in our case would be something like n is less than 5, and we can type in like print some statement like hello world, hello, and we'll also type in, let us say, type in the value of n right here so that it's clearer, and then we'll also have to specify an increment value so that our loop doesn't get stuck at one place. Let us try running this once. What should happen is that it would do it for it would print out a 0, then it would increase the value of n, and as long as this n is less than 5, this code would run. But let us say that in some case this value is 6, which is definitely not less than 5. Would this loop work? So if we try running this once, we notice that the loop does work once. Even though the condition is n is less than 5, still the loop prints this out, goes over here, the n value would become 7, which is definitely not less than 5. That is why this loop would only work once, which is the difference between do and while loop. So if you want to execute the statement once, even though the condition is not satisfied, you can use the do while loop. Otherwise you can use the while loop to check for a condition. And the for loop, when you have like an initial value and then you want to go up to certain value, like to n is until that condition is satisfied, you can use the for loop. So with that done, like we have mostly covered all the basics of like the Dart programming language. If we'll go again down to the language tour, you'll notice like after functions we did these conditional control flow statements, and we also have looked at some operators like the basic arithmetic operators. There's plus, minus, equality check operators, which we would be talking about as we work with Flutter. There would be relational operators that we would be looking at, and after this there are the classes, so which we would be talking in length when we're working with Flutter, because we would need to work with these classes. And you can check out more if you want to know from this language tour itself.